Kia ora, Legionnaires, Rycon here, and welcome back to Zealand, and to the long-awaited Campaign 2. Zealand is a post-apocalyptic, survival horror tabletop RPG created by myself and Stormforge Productions. Humanity is no longer at the top of the food chain. Every day in Zealand could be your last. Hunger, thirst, sleep, and exposure all weigh you down in a battle of attrition with the unstoppable dead. What makes Zealand unique is we take the survival aspect of survival horror very seriously. You will see your character weaken as sleep deprivation, hunger, and thirst slowly whittle them down. But that is where the choice comes in. Will you just take it? Or will you do anything and everything necessary to survive? And how much of yourself can you retain in your battle to survive? These are just some of the questions this game poses. Zealand is the answer to all those arguments you've had with friends and family about just how long you'd survive at the end of the world. In Zealand, we encourage you to play as yourself, to create a character that resembles your skills and abilities. And that's exactly what I did with my group of friends, which eventuated in the first campaign of Zealand here on the channel. From the initial fall of the world to 5 years after, in Zealand, time is separated by eras. There is the Fall, Terra Mortis, and New Genesis. Now we have already experienced the Fall throughout Campaign 1, and now in Campaign 2, we will be diving into Terra Mortis, aka Land of Death. Now a question you may ask is, do I have to have watched all of Campaign 1 to be able to dive into Campaign 2? And the simple answer to that is no. While there will be characters returning from Campaign 1, you can pick up Campaign 2 no problem. The world and the era that Campaign 2 takes part in is distant from Campaign 1. Our story in Campaign 2 is picking up 20 long, hard years after Campaign 1, which puts us at 25 years after the Fall. The population of the world has plummeted. The lights have gone out and Earth has remained dark ever since, albeit for small pockets of civilization. Humanity as we know it is no longer the dominant force on the planet. A year after the longest night, less than 1% of the human population remains uninfected. Earth is a dead world, but life still finds a way. The world has changed dramatically since the Fall, and I'd love to tell you more about it, but for now, that will remain unknown. As you see, the characters that we'll be following throughout Terra Mortis haven't seen that outside world, not for 20 years. Under the ground, they have survived, and that has not been an easy journey. A group of survivors, forlorn and roaming the countryside, happened upon a miracle. A bunker that was mid-construction, but a bunker that had fallen to the plague. The survivors cleared the bunker, catalogued everything within, and decided to call it home. At the time, it was a choice that might have seemed temporary. This bunker was a place that they could catch their breath before continuing on. However, fate or destiny led to a different path. The sky was set alight. Annihilation. Death. A hydrogen bomb was detonated above a nearby city. A city that was once home to these survivors. A city that was no more. The choice to stay or go was simple now. They must survive, endure, and so they would, under the ground. The following chronicles the 20 years these survivors would spend beneath the earth. Events that forged them into the people that would eventually leave the bunker behind. Their home, first of all, needed a name. Limbo seemed apt enough. They numbered just over 40, every life more valuable than ever. Within their first 5 years, a large body of water was discovered in the lattice of caves that ran from Limbo. Glowworms illuminated spaces deeper in, and an effort to preserve all knowledge currently attained began in earnest. Everything these survivors knew would need to be recorded, safeguarded, kept for the future, and part of that knowledge led to the use of biofuels. that would power their furnaces and keep the lights on. Power at this stage was a scarcity. They had diesel for the existing generators of the bunker, but that diesel would only last them so long. But not all was well. Above their heads, a mass migration of the dead settled, led by creatures known as the unborn. Those that were born of the dead. Those that were now old enough to lead them. Heavy rain and radioactive fallout posed an issue as well. Vents would need to be closed during storms, and activity kept to a minimum. Filters would need to be replaced more frequently, and it was now that law and order was established. Vectors, the lawkeepers of Limbo, headed by a survivor named Vedant. The death penalty was a threat that hung over the heads of anyone that would jeopardize the survival of Limbo. A decree deemed even more important as the unborn settlement above them expanded further, and with the use of a periscope, the survivors witnessed the domestication of the dead, the unborn herding them, controlling them, utilizing them as beasts of burden. More signs of intelligence. It was in this time that the residents of Limbo had their first interaction with someone from the outside, or rather, a choice not to interact. The community remained silent, the bunker door sealed. Whoever was on the outside eventually moved on. Doom and gloom aside, enrichment programs were enacted, both physical and mental. Life underground wasn't easy, and it was a life not meant for human beings. The programs would alleviate stress and stimulate the minds of the survivors, both young and old. The kitchens were expanded further to make use of the various preserved foods in different ways. As some of the youngest in Limbo were now nearing the age of 5, the choice was made that these children would help by shadowing adults, learning the various tasks that were necessary to keep Limbo alive. The excavator was used to create the warrens, private living spaces for families, as up until this point, all the survivors of Limbo had been living in tight, close proximity. Within the bunker's storage, a broken sewing machine was discovered. The machine was repaired and put to use, fixing and recycling clothing, a process that would take place in the old living space. Above their heads, unborn hounds roamed the hills, at times nearing the narrow air vents of Limbo. To avoid sound traveling, noisier activities will be limited to Limbo's artificial daytime, with fears that the hounds may find another way in. The cave system is mapped, and unexplored passages are sealed, collapsing the rock to keep them safe from potential breaches. The underground river, fed by the lake, is used to harness hydroelectric power, in smaller amounts at first, but no doubt would become a crucial part of the infrastructure in time. To supplement that, exocycles, long ago scavenged from shipping containers, will be added to the power system in times of emergency. Great care was to be taken with each of these construction tasks, as proper medical tools were scarce, making injuries and surgeries incredibly dangerous. Plant fibers, gained from the hydroponic farms, were woven into usable strands for sheets and bedding. And finally, in the 5th year, one of the oldest among them, Zane O'Connell, confessed to being a commander on Great Barrier Island, an island that caused dismay and death for many of the surrounding residents. The community, of whom many of them lost loved ones to the actions of this man, trialed him, finding him guilty, but with a lighter sentence. There was talk of exile, but the risks involved were many. For now, O'Connell would remain behind bars. It was discovered in the comms room that the periscope, used to view the outside world, could be angled in such a way to allow the sunlight to travel down and onto the face of a viewer, a practice now performed by many in Limbo. Sunlight hours would be scheduled for those who wished it. And now we enter years 5 to 10. The warrens, the living spaces of Limbo, are expanded, with personal living spaces available to all in Limbo, not just the families. The glowworms of the lake are spread and bred throughout the cave system, creating an artificial night sky, further enriching the lives of the cave dwellers. The community experienced their first death. Zane O'Connell, the Great Barrier commander, had passed away in his cell. Funeral rites were established, and a catacomb, known as the Stacks, was created deep within the tunnels. Community members had the choice, upon death, for their body to be recycled. Their body would feed various species of mushrooms. These areas of the stacks would unofficially come to be known as the mushrooms. As the original supplies of the bunker began to dwindle, demand for booze led to the production of alcohol. Various forms of rice wine are produced as hydroponics are expanded. Old tools are refurbished and replaced where possible. The lone solar panel that had been trickling them energy over the years had finally failed. Dust and debris had rendered the panel useless. A formalized hierarchy was created, a council of 5 that would be elected once a year, known as the directors. In protest of the majority decision, a farmer, Keith Berry, attempted to take control by cutting off food sources, but failed and was imprisoned. Personal environmental protection is fabricated by those with the know-how, and in the 7th year, a stranger arrives. Or someone that at first seemed a stranger. His name was Isaac, or Skulk. Known to some of the council, he claimed that he was being hunted by the unborn. Communicating through the bunker door, he was eventually granted entry. The shipping containers that made up the entrance to the bunker would be kept as 2 distinct areas. The first, the entry, and the second, decontamination and quarantine. It was in the second that Skulk would remain for a time, but in that wait, he would share knowledge of the outside world, of the great hordes that walked the land and the unborn that led them. It was a dead world. Limbo expanded further, with a schoolhouse being dug out from admin, and in this room, a proper schooling system was established. And after a breakthrough, both hydro and biopower is increased, reducing the strain on power, allowing for a more free use of electricity. And finally, in the 10th year, the farmer that attempted to wrestle control went missing. His cell was unlocked. No body was found. The vectors would increase their numbers, and patrols would begin around the clock. Keith needed to be found. A task deemed even more necessary as we enter the next block of time, from year 10 to 15. Cats that came with the original survivors of Great Barrier began to go missing too. The scattered remains of a few were found deeper in the caves. Disease spreads throughout Limbo. Quarantines are enacted, and projects grind to a halt. Worse still, an earthquake struck, collapsing part of the warrens, instantly killing several inside. The remaining warrens and living spaces are reinforced to halt further collapse. A message, written in blood, was found in the commons. The community as a whole leapt into action, forming a manhunt and finally capturing and executing Keith. The Rangers, the cave exploring arm of Limbo, delved deeper into the caves, finding aquatic life, untouched by radiation. The kitchen is expanded to preserve the newly acquired food source, and power is now in abundance after another breakthrough. Portable batteries are constructed for older power tools. A group of potentially people pass by overhead and skirmished with the unborn. Those that watched through the periscope were unable to tell who was human and who wasn't. A proper washroom was created, expanding sanitation, and plumbing was run throughout the colony. The main doctor of Limbo, an older veterinarian, stumbled upon a stash of hard drugs and overdosed, leaving Limbo without their doctor. Now Willow, a nurse before the fall, was their only resident with medical experience. After a shifting of the rock, a body was uncovered and buried from the warrens, a process that revealed a new cave and in turn a vein of metal ores, of which the collecting and processing began immediately. The warrens are finally cleared out too, all the dead being put to rest. Shannon Reacher, a widow of the warrens, attempted to sabotage the process, but was stopped and jailed for a week with counseling. And last of all, an electric forge is created in the power room to process and use the recovered metal ores. And now we enter those final years, from 15 to 20. At the start of the 16th year, one of the current directors at the time wandered into the deep caves, never to be seen again. The community couldn't afford to lose another in the search. With less expansion, and now a need for more physical activity, the gym is founded with weekly martial training, and a project begins to create new filters for water, air, and environmental equipment, it is now the depression falls upon Limbo. The years inside haven't been easy, and needing to stay busy, the community begins to convert the excavator that dug out so much of their home into a rover, a project that would take a long time and require resources that they don't currently have access to. But that might change, as a lookout spied a hot air balloon drifting in the distance. An omen, but a good one, of life outside. Weapons are forged, spears, blades both long and short, clubs, shields, and armor. The doors of Limbo had remained shut for too long. There were people up there, living people. But after 2 decades underground, the world that Limbo had left behind was a world that they would little recognize now. All of these survivors are just as unaware as you as to what awaits them outside the bunker door. A small group would be selected by the directors to leave Limbo, to map the area around their home, and perhaps find a better way for them to survive. And so, with that in mind, before these survivors step outside, let's learn a little bit more about them, about what they've been through, who they are, and their hopes for the future. Let's hear from our survivors.
What's your name?
Witchy.
Just Witchy?
Yeah, Witchy Dugdale.
My name's Vidan.
Callum.
Scott. I go by Rycon as well, but it's mostly Scott.
Jack. When shit hit the fan, I was in a car traveling to Wellington with a few friends. I was actually heading down to play some shows, singing and performing.
I was at uni. I was at AUT, working late on a project, and then shit hit the fan.
Yeah, when everything, went to shit, was on a plane, flying back to New Zealand.
I was with my friends. We're hanging out, doing a movie marathon, when things started going bad outside.
It wasn't until we were about just before halfway down by Lake Taupo that we noticed things were different. That chaos, we throw a kid jump on a priest and start eating his face, and
it was mad. Like, the city went into turmoil. There was vehicles crashing into the AUT building. Scrambled the fuck away from some zombies and met this weird ass dude who was my neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah, we were, about 2-3 hours into the flight, and people just started, eating each other. It was really messy, and I ended up hiding in one of the airplane bathrooms, and then we crashed, and me and a couple other survivors managed to get to this little island that was nearby and survive there for a bit.
We used social media, we checked the internet, tried to get as much information as we could, didn't know if it was riot or worse, and things got bad really fast. There was someone, we thought it was going to be a break-in, a guy in the backyard screaming his lungs off, and he got jumped by this little kid, just a girl, tiny thing, and she was just ferociously tearing at him, his neck, and then after a little while he stopped screaming.
We quickly got the hell out of Dodge, and my first idea, knowing where we were, was to head to Desert Road, because in Desert Road there is a military base, kind of on the far section of it, and that just seems like the most logical first place to go in this kind of emergency situation. We had no idea what was going on, but that was my first step.
And we managed to find a plane, a small plane, a little cargo thing, put pretty much everyone on the island was, either dead or was going to be soon, I think. Yeah. Am I going into too much detail?
We stayed inside, we stayed quiet all night, and we could hear her. We could hear him. Yeah. I was with my friends.
I think that's a bit more philosophical than we should get, since the world ended almost a decade before I was born. So, yeah, probably skip that one.
Most difficult thing I've done to survive.
That's a good question.
There's been a lot of stuff.
I think the decision of staying here, staying put, staying underground. For the time before, we kept moving all the time. We never stopped. And we always had people die. Since we've been down here, before we decided to stay, we hadn't had anyone die.
Just living in a hole count? Don't really know how difficult that is, it's all I've known, but the thing with the guy that was killing cats, that hunt, that was not fun for any of us.
Probably just surviving, I suppose, but I think the hardest moment for me so far was, maybe not so much personally, but was to see you, or to see my brother on the very edge of death.
I think, killed people. That's, it's not easy to take a life. It's, whether it be intentional or not, my mind goes back to freaking Hohepa. That was the hardest thing I did to survive, because we knew he was done and that hard call had to be made.
We had to leave some people behind. I'm not sure. It's been a lot.
We've lost people down here. We have. But if we weren't, I don't think we'd be here.
That was the hardest thing for me, was to be how to remain calm in a situation that I'd never faced a situation before like that. When my brother's bleeding out on the deck of this boat and I'm having to focus on driving to get us out of there, to separate the kind of panic from survival, and that's probably the most difficult I've done.
Taking the life of someone who's an enemy is hard enough, but when you have to make the hard call to end a life of a person that you know and to an extent care about, is that other number on you.
The choice to stay, to put down our roots, to try and build something. That was the hardest choice.
The best thing that I've done, or the best success.
My greatest success was finding my brother.
Oh, it's probably the helicopter. Downing that helicopter, making that shot, that was great. That was absolutely amazing.
Finding a people, finding a community, establishing a family when we thought that everything was lost.
Making it this far. Living. Not dying in 2 plane crashes. That's pretty good, I think, for a start. I'm not sure how.
Out of all the people I could have found, that could have found me, I somehow found it. We found each other. I don't think either of us really believed it at first. We'd both been alone for a long time before then. And now we're here. With others.
I think the greatest success was also trying to separate ourselves from our survival needs and think about the bigger picture. That hadn't happened until I met you and until I reformed with you and until I met the others, when we made a decision to try and help others, basically. I think that's the greatest success, that we managed to overcome the immediate fall and, once some time had passed, to try and think of something that we aligned to be the greater good, basically. And that's, I guess, what led to our decision to go to the bridge, which didn't turn out so good, but we tried. We tried to, and we continue to try and help others. That's what this community about is here. We don't know if there's any others like us, so that's why we try and basically keep an archive and document everything and educate and continue what being human's about.
Making our way back here and, having a couple of safe years where things were okay in Great Barrier. And then making our home here. Yeah, just surviving, I guess.
I haven't really had a chance to have one, I think. It's part of why I want to leave, get out, and so we've had successes as a group, but not really anything that's mine.
What are your hopes for the future?
Initially to survive, as long as possible. Pass on anything that I've learned, and make sure that those around me, those who come after, know of the stories, know of the hardships that we went through. Ideally try and make things easier for them by giving them all of the tools to survive in this in this world that we live in now.
I don't know. I guess that maybe we can rebuild or something. See the open world again. Maybe see people that I've lost.
Opening this door, going outside, isn't a mistake. We've done well down here. It's been hard, but we've done well. We've changed the way we live. We've changed who we are. But so many down here have never seen outside, have never had direct light on their skin. My hope is that opening the door is the right choice, and that it doesn't get us all killed.
Stay alive. Get outside, not die horribly. Those would be nice. Just bring back good news for the people home would be really nice. Something especially for news that the ones that have been born here can leave, ones that were around before the end, that they've safe out there for them to go outside again. That'd be nice.
I guess my fears, I guess it's kind of relative now to the monster being on your doorstep. I guess that would have been something you could say was a fear.
Being forgotten. Yeah, being forgotten would be...
Zombies. Who isn't scared of zombies? Those are pretty scary,
My fears kind of go back to the hopes as well. My fear is that hope is wrong, that it's misplaced.
Fears for the future or fears in general? I heard some horrible things about these unborn dogs. There's been some bad stories from those.
But I guess the greatest fear is the possibility that, this isn't enough, that love's not enough, or that family's not enough. Because we just don't know what's left out there. As being in here, is that enough of a life? That's my biggest fear.
Like, after everything we've been through, after all of the adventures, and after, getting this far, to just be completely forgotten, no mention at all, that's terrifying.
I think I'm scared that there is no hope sometimes, and that it's all, been for nothing. It's kind of dark. But, yeah. Also the creepy kids. Yeah. I haven't really seen much of them, but I've heard stories. Yeah.
That leaving here is a mistake. That going outside loss.
Yeah, just that we'll go out and it'll just be a shit show, and if we make it back, it's just going to be all of us slowly fading away in a hole in the ground.
What do you think the world outside is like now after 20 years?
You know, I hope the air is a little bit fresher than it is in here.
I gotta hope it's grown. That the old world is still there, but just undercover.
I hope it started to sort of cover itself after man and after the bomb, and
it's become so jaded. Like the idea of what it's a pure imagination now. You know, it's kind of almost like the way we tell stories to the younglings here. It's almost like mythology about what we had before. So, I mean, considering the last things that we saw before leaving, or, you know, closing the doors in the world, I just can't understand why they nuked that, you know, our city, our home. And it makes you wonder if they did that to a city as small as Auckland, then how many other places around the world are they doing that to? And then how uninhabitable and unlivable and radioactive is it out there?
I mean, it was hard for us sort of just coming out of, you know, the world ending, but now it's worse because there's radiation to worry about. There's new threats out there that we fucking don't know how they've affected these undead. Like, fuck, nuclear zombies? I don't know, man.
I think it's going to be scary. But there might be something out there that we can work with. Yeah.
I gotta hope there's other people like us, people that have survived underground. Hell, even people further away that wouldn't have been affected by the blast or the unborn.
I can't even imagine how much these other things could have grown. These unborn things we call the unborn now, because, you know, we saw kind of early signs of almost civilization starting with them, so it's just as easy to think what we're doing, they're doing. And the way those big piles of undead they were forming outside, it makes you wonder what's going on like that everywhere and what the purpose of that was, you know. And it makes you think that it's just uninhabitable and like we might not be able to ever go outside, but at the same time there's always going to be that drive to see the sun again properly, or to feel the wind against your face, or to find a piece of art, to you know, feel alive again, basically. But we just don't know. But I think before my time is up in this life, I will unquestionably have to go outside and to know what's outside, because we're curious creatures.
It's going to be a tough time for anyone that goes out, us or the future generations. But hopefully in the remainder of our lives we can map out at least a bit of it so that we can give them more tools, like I said before.
Hope it started to heal and get better. I have a feeling it's still just a different kind of shitty out there, but just knowing will be, yeah, that'd be good.
What I know is that it's unknown. We don't know what's out there, but we're gonna find out. We're gonna map it together.
So it is. Our story will begin next weekend, so be sure to tune in. I cannot wait to share this wild, wild ride with you all. Welcome to Zealand, Campaign 2. And Legionnaires, until next time, stay breathing.